This is Titan Bookkeep web application with Alice Choi, Kosiba Oshodi-Glover, Sabrina Dufflo, Karen Lopez, Daniel Reedstrom, Fernando Enriquez, sponsor Tyler Reeves, and instructor Sarush Golami. We wanted to create a more accessible application so that real estate investors will have an easier time making thoughtful decisions with the information at their fingertips. There is currently no application useful enough that allows someone to manage a portfolio with multiple investments for real estate investors. Our goal was to successfully code a web application page that will be able to work on both desktops and mobile devices.
This semester, we created a page within the web application that will allow real estate investors to theoretically add an investment to their portfolio. Once the investment has been successfully added to the portfolio, the user will be taken to the summary page.
For the backend of our application, we use .NET Core's Model View Controllers architecture. And for the purpose of this video, I've created a very simple web application in order to demonstrate what this looks like. So as you can see on my left, I have the controllers folder and I have the views folder. So in the controller, we have different actions that the user gets redirected to that view with the same name as the action when that endpoint gets called. So as you can see, I have this index, action, about, contact, and error. So on the views, we would have files with the same name so that when this endpoint with index gets called, the user would get redirected to that view, and this is what the user would be able to see. And on the view, this is where you would have your code for like HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and however you want to style it, and that's what we actually used on our code. So for our model, we actually use pgadmin as our database, and as you can see, that's where we're able to have our data. We're able to store the data and manipulate the data, and that's where we're able to get the selects, inserts, updates, deletes, and everything. And then in our code, we use what's called the data access objects, or DAOs, and that's where we had methods such as open, close, and get connections, and that's where when we would, if we needed something from the database, we would call those methods and get our data back, and that's where we would have, once we got the data back, we would be able to manipulate the data in our code and display that.
So the first item that we used was Trello. Trello is a great place where you can collaborate and work on assignments and tasks together. So our sponsor has created a board for us. As you can see, there's the personal boards, and then there's the Dream Team board, which is the one that our sponsor has hosted. So if I were to click boards, we go into this area where it'll show assignments and then other information if needed, such as we needed to understand the setups of other programs. So say if I were to click in assignments, you would click one of these week tasks or the in progress task, and this will pop up where it'll show a checkbox for each item. You can check it off, or it'll say which items still need to be completed. And then also there's a percentage of what, out of 100% of what has been done so far. The second tool that we used was Slack. Slack is where we would communicate with one another. It can be used on your mobile device or on the desktop, and you can ping one another whenever you need to. You can also say everyone inside of the chats, which would get everyone's attention right away. So once I sign in, you would enter your team URL, but I already have ours, so I'll go into our capstone. So once we get into Slack, you can see that there's channels and then there's direct messages. Direct messages is of course just messaging one another whenever questions or we need to answer something for another person arises. Then for the channels, I'm currently in 3. So it shows the Dream Team, which is where we collaborate, ask questions also to generally everyone, announcements. General is more for figuring out where and when meetings are exactly. So another item that we used was GitLab. GitLab is where our sponsor has hosted our entire project so that we can pull and push code whenever needed. So once I sign in, you'll see that there's 2 different projects. The one that I forked from his main code, and then his. just so I don't overwrite his code if anything. So once you click his, you can see when it's been updated last, and then you'll be able to see commits and branches. So if we go into commits, you can see everything that has been edited, and then it has a comment just stating what has changed. And then also when you go to branches, there'll be the branches that shows like the profile page, subscription, analyzation. I won't click them specifically just because of the sensitive information. But using GitLab was really great for collaboration, especially when we were apart coding from one another rather than in a meeting, just so if anyone is coding and had to push changes, Tyler can check it, and then if it's good to go, then he'll merge it with his.
Hello, my name is Daniel, and we're going to go over our quick page that we worked on within the Titan Bookkeep project. So this first part of it is going to be the investment information. This is where the investor or the client that we're working with will fill out information on a possible investment that they will want to put into their portfolio. Now, first off, you're going to want to start with the purchase price, market price, and a lot of the closing and like upfront value of the property. So here we have our purchase price, market price, and even the purchase date here. So moving on from a lot of the upfront costs associated with it, we're going to go over our property information. The property information includes things like the address and the city, and really any kind of information that's relevant to just the value of the property itself, and its square footage and price per square foot. So when you first get your bank, or when you first get your property, you're probably not going to have enough money to purchase it up front. In this case you might, but most often not, it's not going to be as cheap as it is for this property. So we're going to go ahead and just add a new bank here, and this bank is going to give us a loan of $100 with an interest of 1% and a length of 1 year. So it's a pretty good loan. And you can see once we've added it in, it joins with our table here, along with Chase and Bank of America. And if we decide that, hey, we actually don't need this $100 loan, we already have around $250 or so to cover the upfront cost here, we can just delete it from that list, and we just won't consider that. Also, another consideration might be your equity partners on top of debt partners. Your equity partners might be somebody who's interested in the businesses or the venture that you're going on when you're purchasing this property. In this case, we have Arizona State University is interested in it because maybe you want to set up a bakery or a coffee shop near ASU or maybe on their land, and they want a little bit of a stake in that. Alright, so now we're going to look on the second page here. So on the second page, we are talking about our estimates information. So this is what we estimate that the cost will be, the market price, and land value will be when we decide to sell. And say we're going to sell it on the 2018, so we're going to sell 1 year after we purchased the property. We think it's going to be $300 and $400 value. After we look at the estimates, basically what we gain from selling it, we're going to look at what we gain in between when we've purchased it and when we, to the point to where we do sell it. So we're looking at keeping a bike store there, and that bike store is going to give us $123 every single month at the end of the month. And our bakery is just going to give us $10, and it's going to give us $10 starting basically at the end of the year, and then continue on to there. Now, moving on from income, we also have our expenses, and our expenses are basically just like our incomes, where you can add the expenses, which is employees and upkeep in this case, and those values will be added, but they'll be treated differently on the back end and within our portfolio. So in our portfolio, we'll be able to see our income throughout the years and the expenses, and see where revenue is and where you will end up in the end. Now that does conclude the demo. At the final form of this application, we will be able to have all the information listed here about basically our personal information and all the information that we put in on the other pages. On the back end, all of that information that we just filled out will be pushed to our Postgres server. And in this one, they're not going to finalize the information that we use. It's just going to be used for analyzation, which means that we're going to look at it and see what would happen if we put this investment into our portfolio and how would that affect our projected revenues, basically. Now we're going to move on to what kind of lessons we've learned from Fernando.
Time management was very important, especially for this project. Because of the waterfall model of programming that we followed, we received on a weekly basis tasks which the sponsor required of us to have understood and implemented before our next meeting. We learned new real estate terminologies, and this greatly helped in our development of this web application. Overall, the real-world experience of web development in a professional setting helped us to understand the professional aspects of development in general. Also learn new technologies such as pgadmin, .NET Core, and others.
Thanks for watching our presentation, and thank you to our sponsor for this opportunity.
We were gonna leave!